recording. Okay, so this presentation will be recorded. So you can view it at your convenience at another time. So again, I do come from schools. I was in Wesco ISD for 10 years as the head of business. And then I was at Region 1 where I conducted trainings for CFOs, superintendents, and accountants. So I happen to love finance, school finance especially. So I do enjoy it. So if you see my face get all lighted up, it's because I really do enjoy it. We do have a lot of material to cover, but don't worry. Your business office has an actual manual that they've created for you. Everything I'm going to cover is in the manual, and the manual is definitely available to you in the internet, and also this presentation is available to you. So feel free to ask questions. Sandy will guide through the questions. And just to let you know that I am not in the valley right now. I am in the Rocky Mountains, actually on top of the mountain, in Breckenridge, Colorado. So technology is just awesome because I'm able to actually do a training and actually also be here in the mountains. It's beautiful, by the way. It's like 40 degrees. So it's a really pretty morning. So this is really awesome. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me do that. And okay, so this is the presentation. Again, we're going to cover the district activity, student activity funds. Why it doesn't seem like they cover so much money, because of course your general operation is your main funds, but through the years I have noticed that student activity funds is where a lot of people get in trouble. There's a lot of little procedures that need to be done, and sometimes people don't have the time to learn them, and that's why your business office is with Ms. Martinez has requested this training, because this is the area where a lot of districts get themselves in trouble when an audit comes around. So I'm going to cover a lot of material, but again, don't worry, all this material is available there with you, but feel free to ask some questions. So we're going to start. Hold on, let me. Yeah, I didn't even practice with it. Hold on. It's not pushing. There. Okay. So we're going to cover like a lot of material. Main thing I want to teach you all is the purpose of activity funds. Why do you have activity funds? And why so much rules? It's important for you to know. It's important for you to know what is a student group, who's responsible, what's a sponsor, why is an audit conducted with this, how do you keep records, because this is public. It's in your general fund, it's in your general operation, so therefore you have to have records. We also have to, and we're trying to utilize accounting systems so where it's easier for everybody to document all your transactions. And what are your handling funds? You're handling money. Anytime you're handling money, you have to have procedures, because it is not your money, whether it's the general operation, it's for the public, and in this case, it's for your trustees. We also have check acceptance policy, collection procedures, how the sponsors need to handle this money, and how the principal or designee. Whenever we say principal or designee, whoever the principal assigns this responsibility, but ultimately the principal does have to ensure that this is taken care of. We're also going to cover deposit guidelines. When you actually put the money into the bank, what is required? What's your responsibility? How do you do it? How do you complete a deposit? What are the disbursements? How do you issue a check? How do you request a check? Also, when you are given donations, there's actually procedures for that. And those are important. What constitutes a fundraising activity? What guidelines should you follow when you have a fundraising activity? How about tax exempt or tax-free purchases? How does this all fit into activity funds? When you're sponsoring school trips, how does that work? How do you collect sales tax? Normally, school districts are not in that business of collecting sales tax, but for activity funds, there is sales tax. So we need to cover that. How do you handle return checks when people don't Don't have enough money in the bank. How do you handle that? How do you redeposit it? How about writing personal checks out of this funds? Is it allowable? Is it not? What are your purchasing procedures? Again, these funds are in your trustee. They're in there. So therefore, you have to have purchasing procedures. And then can you transfer funds? The first one is, I wanted to share this with you because I thought it was so meaningful. It says the power of purpose. And if you see the little plant, it'll grow depending on its purpose. Everything has a purpose on earth. You know, God created everything for a purpose. And activity funds are not just for anything. They have a purpose. There's a reason why activity funds were created, and we need to ensure that the reason we're utilizing it, it's for its intended purpose. And that's, to me, that's the meat of this presentation. Why do we want these funds? Are they for the right purpose? And if so, if you've got the purpose and it is for the right purpose, then you just need to follow these guidelines and then everything will be fine. So let's cover the purpose, to me, the more important reason. And in the bottom, it actually tells you the purpose. It says to promote the general welfare of each school and the educational development and morale of all students. So it's pretty general, but it is a purpose. School districts are not allowed to just go and do anything. Okay, I'm gonna go sell real estate. I'm gonna go sell all this stuff so I can get all this money. No, no, no. Schools are created for a purpose, and activity funds too. It says to promote the general welfare of each school and the educational development and morale. So it's got to stick to that. So anytime you want to create some kind of activity or something, go back to the purpose. Is it for that? Is it to promote the welfare of the school and the educational development? If it is, go for it. But if it isn't, then maybe that's not the right venue. Maybe you can do the booster clubs or something else. So also the definition of activity funds is the accounts for funds held by a school in a trustee capacity or as an agent. The school is holding these funds for these student groups, these clubs, or teacher groups and the general administration of the school. So it is a trustee capacity. So therefore, because you're in a trustee capacity, the generally accepted accounting principles require that you ensure compliance with what you're following. So therefore, the business office has to make sure that these activity funds are also meeting the requirements of the general operating. And the school district has a whole system for them. That's a whole other training. But activity funds also fall into certain preview for that. So the business office has to ensure. And again, the reason for the training is because this seems to be the area where people fall short of following procedures and therefore get themselves in trouble. There's been article after article where some people stole the money or they kept the money and anytime this happens, you are in a sense dealing with public funds. Public funds that becomes a activity that can be punishable by many different ways, including jail. So therefore, it is an important responsibility to handle funds in a school district, and the business office takes it very seriously, and that's why they're having this training. They want to ensure that everybody understands what they're doing and therefore follow the procedures and safeguard the assets of the public. So what is a student group? We said that it was to promote the general welfare of students so we can create students group. So what is a student group? It says a formal, organized, responsible group made up of and governed by students. Now, this is the interesting part, and this isn't your procedures. It has to have officers and bylaws or charter. Why? With a stated purpose. Why did this group come about? Why are we creating it? You know, could the general fund take care of it instead of having go through all the, I remember in Westaco, we had so many that just didn't make sense, when in reality, they just wanted a little bit of money. And what we did is we reorganized the general operations to make sure that people were utilizing their general operating in a lot better way, so that they don't have to do all these little things and follow all this procedure. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. I mean, there's a reason for student groups, and if you have it, then you just need to ensure you have and follow these rules. And you also need a current list of officers should be on file. This is also a learning experience for students, you know, how to handle this student group, how to handle the governance of it, and the Robert Rules of Order, all this stuff. So it's a good opportunity. It's not that I'm saying it's bad, it's actually good, but you also need to have a good reason for it. Who responsible for its action? It has to be responsible for its action. And this is the interesting part. You should have a sponsor. And the sponsor cannot be somebody outside the school. It needs to be a school staff member, and that name of that individual should be on file, because we're going to cover the responsibilities of that sponsor. It says only school and districts can authorize a student group. So again, only the district, because the district is going to take it under its trust. So therefore, they're the ones that can authorize, and there's a form for that, to authorize a student group. Now, who is responsible because of the activity funds, they're in the campus. It's actually the principal or his designee. So the principal can designate somebody, but of course, ultimately everything falls under the preview of the campus, the head of that campus, which is the principal. So the responsibilities include proper collection, disbursements, and control of all funds, monies, including, remember, I take the safekeeping of those funds, even $1, even $2, even $3. And a lot of activity funds are done through cash. So that's why it becomes more, how should I say it, tempting. When we work in auditing, we try not to allow people an area where they get tempted, because funds can, then people can say, well, I have a $10, let me just switch it and I'll pay it back. And that kind of stuff. And that happens with schools a lot. And again, I told you, they just get themselves in trouble for that. Another one is administration of these transactions. You have to also comply with local and state laws and local procedures. And that's what we're going to cover right now. So what you're going to have to comply with if you are responsible for activity funds, this is what it is. But again, don't worry, everything is in a manual, and so is the training going to be covered through recording. You need to have the principal or the designee need to ensure that people are trained, because a lot of times what happens, a new secretary comes in, a new somebody, and they don't understand what's going on. They need to be trained. Now, you don't have to do the training. You can ask the business office to give you some training, or like they're doing right now. But that does need to be ensured, and you need to supervise all personnel assigned to this. So again, principal designee, and the principal, because you know that is your campus. Parent and booster clubs are not included in school activity funds. So again, parent and booster clubs should not be part of what you're controlling. I was asked once in Weslaco to audit a booster club. And I said, I can't, because I'm being paid by public funds, and booster clubs are not in your, they're not in your group. So therefore you're not supposed to go in and touch those books, because they're not yours. And the reason is you don't want that responsibility. Who knows what's happening there? So, but the ones that you do are your activity funds. So let's talk about what is a sponsor. Remember, we said you have to have a sponsor for each activity fund. So again, it has to be an employee, so of the district, which, you know, and they need a managed daily collection. So this sponsor needs to make sure that the collections are managed, and we're going to cover how often and everything. You need to ensure that you're giving receipts and submission of all funds received from students. So you need to ensure that the money is coming in and that there's being deposited. You have to develop fundraising plans. So if you are the sponsor, what's your plans to raise funds? You should have a plan, not just, oh, okay, today we're going to do this, tomorrow we're going to, no, let's have a plan. And in Weslaco, I used to have my fundraising plans approved. You don't have to, it doesn't require it, but it does sort of put people in the planning phase. It's important for you to sit down and say, okay, this club, how are they going to raise funds? Well, they're going to do it through t-shirts, but this other club is going to do it through t-shirts. The other one, so they're all going to do the same thing. Well, that doesn't jive. It's one campus. So therefore, it's important to have some plan of how they're going to raise the funds. They have to monitor financial position of the activity. And what that means is they have to ensure that the activity fund it's going to make money. Otherwise, how are you going to pay for stuff that you're going to need? Are you going to make enough money to cover a trip? I don't know, whatever the reason was for creation of the group, they were going on a special trip or something like that. You have to issue receipt, I misspelled that, sorry, to students, parents, and teachers. So you have to make sure that there's receipting. There's a way of transaction for the money that came in. There's a receipt. There always should be documentation of that money coming in. Daily deposit of cash. I used to have I remember when some of my activity funds got in trouble, that's where you get in trouble most of the time. People just put the money in the drawer. And what happens is somebody else might open the drawer. So it requires that you daily make sure that all the deposits are put into the bank on a daily basis and receipts are being issued to account for all the money. Safeguarding activity funds until deposited. So let's say that you got the money in the morning, you need to make sure you lock your drawer and you can't come and say, well, I put it in the drawer and I don't know what happened. You need to ensure you have a way of safeguarding the receipts, the money, until you're ready to put it in the bank. So that becomes the sponsor. So the sponsor has a lot of responsibilities. If you have a sponsor, make sure you share these responsibilities with them. When is an audit conducted? I told you that that's the reason a lot of times that we cover these procedures, because the external auditors know that this is the area where there's the weakest. So the district accounting department can periodically conduct. So your business office can come and say, you know what, we need to look at your funds right now. And they could do it unannounced to ensure that everything is accounted for. It says a change whenever a new finance clerk or a new principal or a new secretary comes in. I think it's important also that people go in and ensure that the person knows what they're doing or that they have the right thing, because how about if they end up getting stuff that doesn't balance? And so here you are, a new employee, and you're like, wait a minute, I was given this and I don't even know if it's in balance. So the business office can come in and ensure that everything is falling in place. A special request by the principal. Maybe the principal suspects something. The designee says something's not right. I don't feel there's something going on. They can request it from the business office, and that's not a problem. The business office can go in and start auditing the funds to ensure compliance. So what records do we need to keep? Remember, I told you, because you are part of a district, here we go. Records are so important. Everything has to be documented. All records should be completed in ink. That is important too, because some people tend to write in pencil. But no, when you're dealing with financial records, we don't want pencil because people can erase. You need ink. And they need to be readily available for examination, meaning you have to have your organization. You got to have either a file cabinet with a key on it or something, so that, and they're available for somebody to come, some kind of organization. You need to keep the records for 7 years. Districts, through the laws that govern districts, have number of years for each records. For these records, it's 7. For other things, it's different. But for these records, it's 7. And the following are the list of records. For example, your cash receipts, your deposit slips, check request forms. You have a lot of forms, in your business office, I think, will end in the manual. They have a whole list of all the forms that you can access. And there's action form, approval of fundraising activity forms, all those are forms that they're there, the business office, club meeting minutes, list of officers and members. So we covered the records, but how about the accounting system? Are you all, Sandy, are you all there?
Yes, we're here.
Okay.
It's a little bit choppy.
Yeah, my somewhere it said internet unstable. Okay, so the accounting system, and this is a good thing because you all are mostly you should be familiar with Ascender. Ascender is your finance system. And so the business office is wanting to ensure that all our records are in the same system with the same process that you do for your general operating, the way that you use your general fund, your federal funds. So they want to use Ascender, and ultimately that's what you want. You want all your records in one system. It's just so much easier for you, and it's definitely so much easier for the business office because instead of having to go and take records from another system and then put them over here, it's just a lot of work. So all transactions will be maintained using the Ascender financial posting module. And it says, see Appendix A for record keeping procedures. They do have another appendix, and I think you're going to have more training on this. Monthly bank statements is the official support. So monthly bank statements are very important. So make sure you have your documentation of the monthly bank statements. It says principal needs to ensure financial secretary has adequate time. That was always my problem with my activity fund people. They would tell me, I have so many duties, Ms. Guzman. The principal wants me to do this. I don't have time for this one. But you know what? I told you again, this is the area where you can get in trouble. So you have to allow principals enough time and check on them. Say, did you finish your monthly work for the activity funds? Did you complete everything? Did you submit everything to the business office that they need? So that does need to happen. If not, I mean, then there's activity funds probably shouldn't happen then. If you don't allow enough time, then the responsibility is going to fall short. And everybody will get in trouble, including the business office and including the superintendent, because in the audit, it just doesn't say this person failed to do this bank recon. It doesn't. It says the district failed to follow procedures. So in a sense, everybody gets in trouble. So we need to ensure that these individuals have enough time. The finance office personnel will complete monthly bank recons to ensure proper. So the business office will do the bank recons, but they need all your information. So make sure you're keeping them and you're turning in on time so that the business office can reconcile on time, everything timely. The more that you lack in doing this timely, the more time you allow for problems to occur. So the faster you get this done, the easier that it becomes, or you catch issues in a much earlier time. How should we handle the funds? So we're talking receiving cash and checks. The Valley View ISD has a receipt book, and it should be used to document the physical receipt of cash. Everybody should have their receipt book. And it is pre-numbered. It already has a number so that you don't have to assign numbers. The reason is we want to make sure we account for every number. And if you make a mistake, you need to say that this was, you still have to record the business office goes and makes sure there's 100, 101, 102, 103, 104. You're not missing one. If you're missing one, they want to know why. What happened to this one? Well, I made a mistake and it says right here, void. Okay, that's fine. Receipts should include the following. They need to have a date, the activity fund site and the amount, the name of the individual or firm submitting the funds, who's the one giving you the money, and description of why the money was received. So you do need to ensure you write all this into the receipt. The business office will utilize this data to ensure proper accounting in the system. You also need to have the correct fund account code, because if you don't, then the right activity student group didn't get the right credit. Maybe you wrote the wrong one, and now the third grade got the credit instead of the fourth grade, and then the sponsor says, wait a minute, I made all this money, and why isn't my money in the bank? So you need to make sure you use the right one to give the right student group credit. You need a signature of the person receiving the money. So whoever stands in front of you and says, here's $100, well, you sign that you gave me 100 and I gave you a receipt. No temporary checks accepted, and you know why? You know, the people could just create an account, even though now there's a lot more transactions through visas and cards and stuff, but people are still using checks. So just make sure you're doing yours temporary. Checks need to include the driver's license, the telephone number. Before the transfer of cash or check, the official receipt should be completed. Again, it's like stressing it, but they're stressing it for a reason. Receipt, receipt, receipt. You should never, even if you receive $1, you give a receipt. Never, never receive nothing without giving a receipt. If error on the amount or signature, void, put void and restart a new one. Because again, I told you the business office is going to count, and so is the external auditor. They're going to account for the numbers. That's just a way to make sure you are safeguarding your assets. So that was a handling, but how about our check acceptance policy? Because a lot of people some still use check, and especially because it does have and I don't know, I didn't ask Sandy if Valley View uses credit cards, acceptance of credit cards, but most of the time they pay with checks. So what's the acceptance policy? It has to be pre-printed information, not temporary. Nothing that was written in by hand. You need full name, street address, home phone number, secondary phone number, and driver's license. And I think we sort of covered that. Checks are to be endorsed at the time they are received or accepted. And so at the time you receive them, don't leave them blank. Put for deposit only, activity fund name, campus name, account number. If the bank is to be returned, there is a $35 service fee, and they need to know that, because how about they give you $20 and then it got returned? So now it's 35 plus the 20. So it's an expense because the district does get charged for return checks. So what is our collection procedure? What is it? The money collection form should be completed by the principal designee, indicating the list of contributors and their contributions. It should be turned in as a full page and filled out. So here you're filling out the whole money collection form. And you, again, should issue a receipt to the sponsor. So the sponsor they've been doing the daily depositing, and now they have all of them collected. So now they turn it into the principal, and the form has everything. So those are, again, forms. All you have to do is the forms are made to make procedures easier for you, just so that you can ensure you follow what you need to do. If you complete a form completely, that's pretty much what you need. What are the sponsor money handling guidelines? All cash and checks must be turned into the principal designee each day. So the sponsor collects and then turns it in to the designee. Money on hand at the end of the school day should be deposited. Again, I know it stresses it, but the procedures also stress it a lot. And there's for a reason, just so you make sure you don't get yourself in trouble. A sponsor must be present at all times during events with money being exchanged. So if money's being exchanged, you need to make sure somebody is just overseeing it to make sure people are not putting their money in their pockets or something. What are the principal designee money handling guidelines? So that was the sponsor, but how about the principal? So the principal needs to ensure that physical transactions of cash and check is documented and physically secured. So you need to make sure money is physically secured. The drawer is locked, whatever is locked, to make sure. You need to complete the following steps. Only accept sponsored deposits with properly completed money collection forms. So the sponsor turns in their stuff, but they need to have their form completed. And I know it seems like, okay, this is too much, but if you ensure, again, if you ensure you follow this, you're not going to get yourself in trouble. You're going to do exactly what needs to happen. It just makes it easier. You need to recount cash to ensure total cash matches with receipts. So the sponsor gave all these receipts together with this. So does it tie? Or are we short already? Because now you're accepting it. The principal is accepting it from the sponsor. So if the sponsor is short, then in a sense, if you didn't catch it, then you're short. Issue receipt for the money deposited by the sponsor. So the sponsor gives you all this of all this. So now they get a receipt. You gave me $500 with all these information, and now you get a receipt. Again, it's just when money transacts, it's just think about when you go to a store, there's a receipt, there's always a receipt when money transacts, and it's for documentation of what just happened. What are the sponsor deposit responsibilities? So again, what was the money handling, and now what are the deposits? The sponsor must complete a money collection form, include written documentation of where money came from, include written documentation of total amount of money being submitted, request a receipt from the principal. So the sponsor gives all this to the principal. So now the sponsor wants to make sure that she's off the hook with all this responsibility. So the sponsor says, give me a receipt. And so you as a sponsor, and that's why you do need to teach this little area also to your sponsors, that they should request a receipt. That's just for everybody's protection. What are the principal designee deposit responsibilities? All cash and checks must be forwarded to the business office on a daily basis to be deposited in the bank. Money on hand at the end of the day should be deposited again. So try to not have any money on hand by the end of the day. The designee's personal money should never be stored with student campus activity fund money. So don't allow for your own personal money to say, oh, I have $5, let me put them in there. No, don't mix, no commingling. Because that's where you get yourself in trouble. And I remember I've been through those things where some people, they're like, and they're good people. They're like, well, it's just, I was just going to do this. Well, no, don't do that, because you get yourself in trouble. And again, I told you, it's not just yourself, you get the whole district in trouble. So what are the principal designee deposit slip guidelines? Each completed deposit slip total should exactly match the corresponding money collection form. So the business office has a money collection form, each deposit slip. So that's it's just a matter of accounting. It's a proper accounting. Each deposit slip must reference the campus and club name. The correct account is used, so the funds are deposited to the proper account. It seems to be repetitive, but if it's repetitive, it's for a reason. I'm covering the procedures manual just as it was written. So if the business office felt that they needed to ensure that all this is stated and in the proper responsibility areas, it's because they have found that to be an issue. And I have found that to be an issue. And I've worked with schools and I would train schools and guarantee you that that's the area where they get in trouble. So the principal designee will post the deposits to the proper budget accounting account once all proper documentation is received. Remember, missing information may delay proper credit to the appropriate. So you need to ensure you have the right information. Otherwise, credit cannot be assigned. Once validated by the bank, the deposit slip serves as a record for the specific date that the receipt was credited for the bank. So when you write deposit slips, don't write them so where you can't even read them. I've seen some where I'm like, even the auditor would say, oh my goodness, you can't even tell what they're writing. So be good about it, as you can see, they're writing the deposit slip right there, but make sure they're eligible and that you understand exactly what it needs to cover. Deposit slips should list receipt numbers. Remember, receipt numbers for every time, and now they're good. The deposit slip will cover every receipt. After all required deposit procedures are completed, the principal shall file and keep all deposit records as follows. And there's a yellow copy of the bank deposit slip and the money collected form signed by all parties, all other documentation. So again, you just need to make sure you keep all this in case the business office needs to come in and start auditing some of the records, but an external auditor also comes in, and the external auditor comes in once a year, and they might pick activity funds. You don't know. The business office doesn't know either. They are just told, okay, we're gonna go do this. So now they'll go to a specific campus and they'll start looking at some activity funds. So what are our disbursement procedures? Disbursements is the issuing of checks. All expenditures shall be paid by student activity account checks. You don't pay by cash. You don't go say, well, here's $5. Here, I took $5 from the cash and now go pay for this. No, no, no. Everything has to be paid. It's a separate thing. Money's collected this way and checks are written this way. So remember that, because that's again where people get in trouble. Income received from a specific group should be expended for that group. So therefore, don't commingle groups either. Like if this group had this money, then this expense is for that group. So the coding is important for so that the proper student groups get credit. The principal shall ensure that expenditures from these accounts are written for the intended purpose of the group and shall not divert. So why are we paying for this whatever that doesn't have anything to do with the purpose of the activity fund group? Remember, I told you purpose was the important thing. I mean, there is a reason why this was created. So does it fit? If it doesn't, then that shouldn't be done. It shouldn't be done, even though it's convenient. It might be convenient, like, oh, maybe I can pay for this and not have to go through the business office procedures of issuing a PO, finding a approved vendor, When that happens, that's called circumventing. And that is definitely grounds for reprimand. You cannot circumvent purchasing procedures or business office procedures. When you're found to circumvent, that is definitely time for some kind of written up or even separation from the school, because circumventing is not a good thing. That's a bad word in business office. So be careful with that. So don't start issuing checks just because you don't want to go through the regular procedures. That's intended. Again, all this is for your protection. It really is. People think, oh, the business office has all this procedure. They're just for your protection and for the protection of the public funds that you're safeguarding. No expenditure shall be approved unless sufficient funds are available. So how can you spend for this group when they haven't collected enough? So therefore, proper accounting to make sure. How to request a check. So now you need to issue a check from the student activity funds. A check request form is the authority for the issuance of the activity fund. So you all have another form called the check request form. Pre-numbered checks are used to disperse all funds from the activity fund checking account. Check must be printed with cool activity fund account. So there is a check and they're pre-numbered. Again, pre-numbering is just to account for every one of them. And if you void one, we need to have copies of that it got voided to ensure that we're accounting for every number. A complete check request form must, and remember, complete. All you have to do, if you complete a form, then you're done. You don't have to worry about it. You need to pay the date, the amount, the signature of person requesting checks, description, student activity numbers, approved signatures of the principal, check number. So you see how you're requesting signatures from more than one person? That's like protection. You're requesting a signature from the person requesting a check and from the principal. Because let's say that Francis wants a check. My name's Francis. I don't even know if I covered. And Francis is also the principal. So there's no checks and balances. So don't issue yourself checks. That's really a big red flag. How to request a check. It says attach the check request form to supporting documentation and vendors invoice or the original sales slips or cash register tapes and that are to be kept on file for audit. So all this needs to be kept. Check request forms for advances may not be completed without supporting documentation. Permanent documentation must be attached to support the advance payment. So you want to check, but you haven't paid it yet. You need supporting documentations of what you're doing that. Indicate on the check request form the receipt number if the monies are returned which have not been spent. All invoices and receipts might be checked to ascertain the sales tax has or has not been charged. Most purchases made by school are tax exempt. So school districts don't have to pay taxes on their purchases. So therefore, and they have just because they're school district, it automatically exempts them from the state sales tax. So all activity funds must be manually signed by two authorized check signers. So they require two check signers. Payments must always be made to a specific person, company. Never leave them to cash or leave it open, just not to anybody. No, those are no good. Checks shall never be made payable to cash under no circumstances. No check should be issued to the principal designee. Remember, I told you don't issue yourself checks. If circumstances arise, you need to contact the business office. If for some reason, which shouldn't be, but if it ever does, get the business office involved because you don't want to get yourself in trouble. All checks must be typewritten or completed in ink. Okay, so make sure you do that. In case of advance payments, you have a check request form again. Upon completion of the activity, any unused funds should be returned with all supporting documentation to the secretary. So the check was written, it was cashed, now you have the money, but you have leftover money, you need to make sure you turned it in. All settlements should be attained prior to the end of the school year. So you all are July 1st through June 30th. So you're right now in July. So the auditors are getting ready to start looking at your documentation. So you need to make sure that by the end of June, all your documentation, everything having to do with the year that just ended, is turned into the business office and everything's there for the auditors to complete their audit. How to manage a donation. So school districts do allow people to give them donations. That's not a bad thing. And they could either be tangible items or money. Tangible meaning assets, like they could give something. Donations of cash should be accompanied by a letter with a donation specifying the amount and the intent. Don't just, why did they give you money, and you're saying, well, why ask? Well, it's important because, hey, how about if they wanted a favor in return? Well, no, the school's not going to say, I accept this donation so that you can get the bid on so-and-so. That's illegal. So it is important to know the specific intent. Why are they giving you this gift and for who? Is it for this group or is it for this other group, and why? So it's important. Donated funds shall be used for the purpose set forth by the donor. So you need to make sure, like somebody gave you $100 for the 3rd grade group. Well, you need to make sure that, and they want it to be used for this trip. So you need to make sure those $100 get used for that trip because you're accepting that, you're accepting that responsibility. Donations of tangible items may also be accepted by the district, but the district does have their own set of procedures where normally the boards approve tangible items and bigger donation items. They go through the actual board to ensure that they're not accepting something that they don't want to be responsible for. There's reasons why. A donation form must be completed for both cash and non-cash. Again, there's a form. Again, the forms are only intended to help you. The form included the donor's identification, the amount donated, a brief description of the item donated, and the value, estimated value. If it's an asset, meaning non-cash, then just give it a value, like about how much is it valued. All donation must be approved by the superintendent prior to accepting. So you see, that's the issue that I just told you. The school district doesn't want to accept just anything. It's important that they accept what is proper and what they can be responsible for. They might not want an asset that they can't take care of. All approved donations should be reported to the business office. Okay, so we covered donations. We covered so much. Am I okay, Sandy, or does people need a break, or should I keep going?
You guys need a break? Yeah. They're ready for a short break.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, guys.
While people are on break and for the principals that just came in, we are gonna, right now, as you can see, we're doing student activity. Omar will follow Francis with procedures. We're going to start implementing the assessor system as Francis mentioned. We're doing baby steps, but we have developed, with the help of Mr. Trevino and Omar, a system where we can actually report our checks through our sender to make it easier to reconcile. After that, we will touch on some housekeeping policies and procedures for accounts payable and purchasing. And we're going to touch on payroll.
I'm just gonna get a cup of coffee too, Sandy. I'll be right back.
I'm gonna give them to like 9:30.
Okay, just let me, so you got about 4 minutes, yeah.
Okay, we're gonna give you a couple more minutes and then we're gonna start again. Okay, Francis, thank you.
Okay, welcome back. I do have still a little few more information, so I'm gonna go a little bit faster so that I can allow enough time for the business office to also do their training. So we're gonna cover what is a fundraising activity. It says any activity involving participation of a student body or a school recognized student group. So it's the activity that they're gonna do to raise funds. It's undertaken for the purpose of deriving funds for that group. Hold on. Did it? I'm having trouble just entering there. It says fundraising activities by student groups or school-sponsored projects shall be allowed with prior administration approval under the supervision of the project sponsor. So again, this activity should be approved. Like, what are we going to do? Are we going to sell popcorn? We're going to sell chocolate? What are we going to do? It's important, because not just any activity is allowed. You got to be careful of what activities are being sponsored, and you got children involved. These are kids, so you also have to recognize that, and there's dangers involved when you have children. Student participation is approved. Fundraising activities shall not interfere with regular instructional program. So the important part And why the school district is there is to instruct kids, not to raise funds. So be careful with that it doesn't hinder the instruction of the students. Funds raised shall be received, deposited, and dispersed in accordance with local. Again, all this I'm telling you, there's procedures, laws, state laws. So we need to make sure. And again, the purpose of schools is not to raise funds. That's why you tax your constituents. You actually tax people, and the tax comes in, and the state also gives you funds. The purpose is to educate your students. Don't forget, that's the main purpose. Fundraising activities are not confined to regular school hours, but are considered an extension. So if it's outside the preview of the regular schools, it's still considered an extension. So they're under your preview of a school, your responsibility. When fundraising activities are in the name of the school, all funds raised become school funds belonging to the school sponsor group. So again, it's an extension. You're an agent of them. You're representing Valley View ISD when you're doing this. So it's important, you're representing the school. Profits raised must be used to benefit the student group responsible for raising the funds. So it belongs to that student group. To request permission to conduct a fundraising, the club sponsor shall complete a form. Again, the reason is you got to make sure you approve. The principal doesn't have people doing the same thing all over the place and not have any control of what's happening in his school. Or let's say a parent comes and says, oh, your third graders were doing this. And you go, what? Wait a minute, they can't be doing that. Well, you approved it. So therefore, there's a form for that so that you can make sure you covered it. Those fundraising activities and student activities shall require solicitation of funds from business or commercial establishments and shall be limited to the attendance area of that school. It's in your procedures, so stick to your area because there's other schools that have their own procedures. Their own student groups. So stick to your attendance area so you don't have overlapping kids, you're just going all over the place. No student shall solicit funds or attempt to sell ads to the public except in his or her own attendance area. No student shall solicit door to door. That's in your procedures. Kids should not be knocking on doors. There's a danger to that, and you all know that. We live in dangerous times. They're totally different. So you need to make sure that this is not happening. Staff money can be raised at the campus as long as items of service sold are not directly for the children. So staff money, you can raise money for the staff, but they're not directly, services sold are not directly for the children. Staff members can sell shirts to the rest of the staff or the food. So the staff can't be competing with the student groups. The students are selling out there, but the staff can do it within themselves if they need funds. If there's to be a festival event, a booth can be designated for staff fundraising so long as it is after school hours. Why? Well, school staff is being paid to work by their hours. So you do need to ensure that if these are happening, it's outside. It must be clearly indicated on the notice sent to the parents that the booth titled staff fundraiser is to raise funds for campus staff. I always try to avoid this, and you don't have to, you could do it, but I try to avoid it. I say, general fund should have enough money to sustain whatever the staff needs, and if we're not, is maybe we need to relook at how our budget is being spent so that we can ensure, because I remember I used to have schools have activity funds, and then at the end, they left the money behind. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. You're having people sell when you have the money right here. Just do a better job of managing the budget, and that would work. Any fundraisers that are strictly school sponsors should use vendors on the approved vendor list. So the district has that. The business office has the approved vendors list. When merchandise is distributed to students to sell and goods are lost or damaged, the final responsibility lay with the principal or sponsor. So you see, if for some reason that you bought something and it got lost, then now the person responsible needs to account for that, or at least pay for that. At the end of each school year, each organization shall report to the principal regarding the outcome of each fundraising activity. So principals, you do need to say, did this activity really work? If it didn't, then why do it again? It makes sense. So therefore, they need to report to you, say, this activity was good. It was profitable and we did a good job. It wasn't that hectic. Or no, this one was really bad. Let's not do that again. Any contractual agreement or like documents may only be signed by the principal or authorized personnel. So anything where you're binding the school, secretary, don't take it upon yourself to sign. Let the one that is responsible for the whole thing, which is the principal. And I used to tell my staff that, I said, you're not paid to take that higher responsibility. I am. Let me sign so that I can be responsible. You're an assistant. So the same goes here. Principal is the only one that can have contractual agreements because he's at a higher level and he gets paid more for that. So most importantly, all campus-wide student or teacher fundraising activity must be approved at least 3 weeks before fundraising event. That's in your procedure. That the principal should at least have a heads up 3 weeks before it happens so that you are ready for that. Raffles, bingo, loteria are prohibited. And so you can't have that kind of stuff. And the state says that too, you're not supposed to. How do we account for fundraising activities? Okay, all collections must be, again, given a receipt, and all payments must be in accordance with the district procedures. Here we go. We've given you a lot of procedures, and it's a lot to remember, but don't worry, you have it all in writing, available at your fingertips. All collections and disbursements associated with this fundraising activities coordinated by school or school recognized groups shall be transacted through the student activity funds. So all this is a preview of student activity funds. That's what we call it. All collections must be deposited daily. Again, cash collection should never be used to make purchase. Never buy anything with cash. All expenses must be reflected with the district. So never transact with cash. We're not in that business. The club sponsor or activity chairman is responsible for record keeping for all money. We covered that. Such records shall include distribution lists, daily collection reports, original cash receipts received for money and deposit. So you need to make sure that you have them for each fundraising activity. Okay, so now we're going to cover tax exempt guidelines. The controller says that the sale, lease, or rental of tangible property directly to or for storage use of any consumption directly by an educational organization shall, which property is necessary to its function and paid for by the organization is exempt. So all this is taken directly from the law. So because you're a school district and you're actually receiving public funds from the state, you're actually getting money from the state. You get much more money from the state than you do from taxes. They're saying, why am I going to tax you when in reality, I'm the one giving you money? So you're exempt. And then there's provisions under this article of the federal statutes provide tax exemption, also the federal. Okay, hold on a minute. There's a delay in the, now you're exempt from taxes because you're a school district. So tax-free purchases, what is a tax-free purchase? All items purchased by the school are for the school's own use, qualify for an exemption from sales tax if the items purchased relate to the educational purpose. The school, the district, or the agent should provide the seller with a sales tax exemption certificate. To be valid, the certificate must state that the merchandise being purchased is for organization's own use in providing education. So this is what a tax-free purchase is. That you buy something, you don't have to pay taxes. It must be made in the name of the organization, and that payment shall be made for the organization's own funds. Purchases for their own use by individuals. So if somebody's buying something for their own use, even though connected with a school or school organization, are not tax exempt. So if I buy something from my checkbook or from my funds, and then I want the school district to reimburse me with no sales tax, so that ain't gonna work, because it has to be the school that is buying it. So be careful with that if you're doing that. Public and not private schools and school-related organizations need not collect sales tax on the following. So you don't have to collect those. These things are exempt. Sales tax is not due for non-taxable food items such as cookies, dough. So if it's food items, then you don't have to, but it's non-taxable. Food and drinks sold during a regular school day, student organization or PTA, subject to an agreement with the proper school authorities. So these are exempt. So you don't have to collect taxes on them, but other things you do. So if you sell t-shirts, and I think we're going to cover it. Oh, these are still exempt, like car washes, club memberships, fees and admission of tickets, including football and drama tickets. This exemption from sales tax applies to guests, employees, or teachers served in a school cafeteria or teacher lounge during the regular school day. Okay. The sale of food, including candy and soft drinks, is exempt from sales tax when sold by the organization associated with the public, which is like for you all. If sales is part of a fundraising drive sponsored by the organization, if net proceeds from the sale go to the organization for its exclusive use, then it's tax exempt. How about school-sponsored trips? So if it's a trip that the school sponsors, meals purchased by the school for the athletic teams, the bands, other authorized school trips are exempt from sales tax if the school contracts for the meals. So you don't pay sales tax on the Whataburger or whoever for the kids. The school must pay for the meals and provide the eating establishment with an exemption certificate, but you need to give it to them and say, okay, look, here's our exemption certificate. Individual members of the athletic team, the band, may not claim exemption from the sales tax on the meals they purchase while on school. So if you're buying it on your own, you can't claim it. I can't say, well, look, I'm part of this school, here's my money, but exempt me. It's only the school that if they're paying, then they're exempt, but not individuals. An exemption may also be claimed for hotel occupancy tax. Like if you stay with a certain hotel and it's sponsored by the student group, you don't have to pay hotel occupancy tax. It's an additional tax. It's not sales tax, it's an additional tax. But you also have a certificate, hotel occupancy tax exemption certificate that you need. Teachers, coaches may not claim exemption from sales tax on individual purchases, again, while on school business, even though they're reimbursed. So even though you're going to get your money back, you still, you cannot claim it because you bought it as an individual. You're the one that transacted, not the school. When do we collect sales tax? Unless the product qualifies under the tax exemption section, the school must collect sales tax on all fundraising products sold. Normally what it is, if it's for the consumption of that individual, other than the ones that are exempt, then you have to pay, you have to collect sales tax. You're collecting. And normally we're not in the business of that. School districts normally don't do that because we're not in the business of sales. We're in the business of service. So, but because of the activity funds and the way they're handled, then there is such thing as sales tax, and then you have to submit a sales tax report to the state and all that. The sponsor can conduct a one-day tax-free sale and sell any taxable item as tax-free, just like the state does. The guidelines for one-day tax-free sales are reviewed in the following section. Even the state does that. Remember, there's that tax day that you can buy anything you want and it's tax-free. When do we collect sales tax? Public and nonprofit private schools, such as charters, and school-related organization must collect on the following. School purchase supplies directly sold directly to students, including athletic equipment and physical education uniform. Fees for material when the end product becomes a possession. So if the student is going to be the one using it, then you have to. Student publications such as yearbooks, football programs, school rings, books sold to the students, all that, you have to collect sales tax. Okay, so that was sales tax. So just remember, and when you do have sales tax, then the business office has to submit a sales tax report on a quarterly basis to the state. What are the return check procedures? So let's say somebody pays with a check, but their check gets returned. The bookkeeper shall immediately notify the maker of the return check and request that it be redeemed in cash. So the person's check bounced, and now you call them automatically and say, you know what, you need to bring me the $20 because your check bounced. If the maker requests that it be redeposited, there's procedures for that. Such action shall be taken. So I think I have it covered in a little bit. And even if you redeposit it, you can only redeposit once. And then after that, you need cash. Under no circumstances shall the return check be surrendered to the maker. In other words, don't give him the return check, except in return for cash. So if he doesn't give you cash, that's a negotiable instrument, in business law. That's a negotiable instrument, that check. So don't give it to him unless he's giving you cash. No check shall be accepted from a party who has not redeemed previously returned check. In other words, if you have somebody that has the habit of giving you bad checks, then don't do it. Don't accept a check. Even the state has people's name and says these people are because it's actually an offense to have return checks. It becomes an offense in the state. What are the redeposit procedures? Prepare a separate deposit disclosing the date, amount, the maker, the previous cash receipt number, so you can reconnect it. Okay, it's the same one that I had over here in the account where the check was. It's because you don't want the business office to double it, Do not issue a cash receipt since such action would constitute duplication. You see, so don't issue a new one. Just reference the old one. If a person redeems a return check with cash, given him or her the return check as his receipt, keep a photocopy of your record. So make a copy of the return check and give it back to them if they give you the cash. So is cashing a personal check allowed? Nope, it's definitely prohibited, and it's actually never recommended, because that's where a lot of people get in trouble. Those IOUs, they say, oh, I'll give you this and you give me $10, or nope. All monies collected must be deposited in the same form as collected. A personal check, in other words, they turn in a check and you deposit $10. No, if they turn in a check, you deposit a check. You don't change that, the form. A personal check may not be substitute for cash collection. No personal checks are to be cashed from funds collected. So let's say a teacher says, can you cash this form? No. Go, there's other areas, ATMs or something. Do not commingle personal funds and district funds. Never, if you're the one that's responsible for the activity funds, do not go and put in your money or anything like that. Don't do that. That's just asking for trouble. What are the purchasing procedures? Again, you now got the money, so now you need to follow the procedures of the school district. The district has policies and procedures which apply to the general fund and also apply to the activity funds, because you're a trustee of this fund, so therefore you have to apply. No expenditure will be made using non-deposited cash. In other words, if it's not there, then how are you spending it? You need to have it before you spend it. No expenditures for the following will be made: individual professional dues, private club memberships, alcoholic beverages, and you would be surprised that you say alcoholic beverages, how is people going to do that? Yeah, they've done it. If it's here, it's because they've done it. So, and other similar related expenses. So be careful with what you're spending the money. These are not allowed, individual professional dues. That's not even the state allows you that. Purchases are to be used for student use only. Office supplies, teacher supplies, technology supply, uniforms must be purchased from budget. So don't be using the student money for your own operations. You should have a budget. The budget should be used for that. No purchase shall be made unless sufficient funds are available in the proper activity fund account. So you got to have the money before you spend it. No attempt to bypass district procedures. I told you a little bit about it. Let's say we want to pay for this, but the business office is all this requirements. By the time I finish that, I'd rather just spend it through here and then reimburse myself. No. That's circumventing. And if you're circumventing, again, I told you those are issues to be addressed by either reprimand or firing. Can we transfer funds between activity funds? Yeah, it says all transfer of funds between activity funds must be made properly documented in writing and approved by the member of the club, sponsor, and the campus principal. So there is a way to do it, and but they got to be documented. And the accounting department must be notified of such transfers. So if you're transferring from one activity fund account to another, then you need to tell the business office so they can be aware that this transfer happened for whatever reason it was necessary. An activity account transfer must be completed and contained. You need the campus name, the date of transfer, a clear explanation of why you're doing it. It could be, you know, that this group now says, let's give the money to this group. It could be. Sub-account numbers, amounts to be transferred, the minutes of the group said, this group's officer said, yeah, you know what? We have a $200 and we want to give it to this group. Fine, as long as you have it all documented. Approved signatures from the principal and the sponsor. So both the principal and the sponsor need to be aware that this transfer is going to happen, but it can happen because maybe you want to close one of the activity, the student groups, and want to transfer everything to this other group. That could happen. It's a lot. So we've come to a conclusion, and I put this up for a reason, that there is a lot of procedures, guidelines to be followed, but the whole purpose of the activity funds goes back to why we created it, the power of purpose. Meaning it's got to be for that purpose that you're having these activity funds. And if you're meeting that purpose, then principals, especially you that are having to approve this thing, make sure that it is a good purpose and that's what we're here for. There's so many. I remember one time I was with Region 1 and they wanted me to get into the business of, I don't know what it was. And I asked my lawyer and he said, Francis, that's not your purpose. And it's true. We could do so many different things, but it's not, if it's not our purpose, then what are we doing there? There's other entities that are for that purpose. Well, we are for the educational of these kids, and student activities are just to help with that group, and mostly also to educate students of how to handle certain things like a group, like have officers, have meetings, collect funds. What do you do for sales? That's just a learning experience, but we got to stick to our purpose. So remember that when you're even starting an activity fund, the power of purpose, make sure that is accomplished. And then you can go and just go through the procedures. It's not about, the business office has created all these forms to make you just easier. You complete the forms, you're in compliance. And I think that's it, Sandy. I covered it pretty fast. So the business office has, of course, Ms. Martinez, she's your finance director. Joel, staff account. Joel and I work together with, Joel comes from La Jolla, very, very versed in a lot of business transactions and business. So utilize his expertise also. And Omar Cardenas, he's your payroll accountant. He's more involved with the detail. But all these individuals are well-versed and can help you, and so can I. If you need my help, then just ask Ms. Martinez, and I'm sure we can handle that. But that is all I had for you. I hope that I didn't overwhelm you. This training probably was more intense than most others because I think Sandy mentioned that it had been a while since activity funds were covered. So we are done. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to cover that with you. Anybody? I see you, Joel. Hi.
So no, there's no questions, but thank you so much for doing such a thorough job. I know that since I've been here, we haven't covered student activity, which is why we wanted to do a thorough presentation. And kind of your knowledge is power. So the more that we teach you, the more that you'll know, and the better off you'll be. So thank you again, Princess, for
Okay. You all have a great day, and I hear it's raining, so it'll be great because we need rain over there. Over here, it's nice and fresh in the mountains. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, of your training day.
Thank you.
Bye.